One source told the Guardian newspaper that moderators cannot control all of the content posted on Facebook because of the sheer volume of material. Well, with me is Jim Gamble, former Chief Executive of the Child Exploitation and Online Protection Centre, a police unit set up to tackle abuse on the internet. Very good to see you, Jim. I mean, we'll talk about some of the details that have emerged in these documents on Facebook in a minute, but I mean, just on that introduction I gave, the sheer volume of stuff appearing on Facebook, it must be almost impossible to deal with it all.
Well, it is. There's nearly 2 billion active monthly users. And the irony here is, I think Facebook is genuinely trying to get better. I think their trust and safety teams work hard around child abuse. Sometimes they get the raw end of the stick because they're easy to attack. But context is key here. Volume is critical. The fact is there is no age verification that works. So the problem for Facebook is you're talking about an environment where even when it's over 18, you can't guarantee that it's only adults in that space. So there are a whole range of issues that make this really complex.
Well, let's look at some of the guidelines that have been issued, in particular when it comes to child protection. Guidelines have been issued to some of these moderators that some photographs of non-sexual physical abuse of children will be allowed if they're not sadistic. How do you judge that?
Well, therein lies the problem. That which is illegal is easy to deal with. What they're going into is the inappropriate area. And I think the challenge for Facebook is to decide who they are, what kind of community they want to represent, and they've got to start making some mature judgments around that. And I think, is it right to allow, particular groups to be castigated while others can't be? Of course it isn't. And I think the free speech argument is clouding a lot of this. I think free speech, absolutely. Don't let the government spy and pry without legal process. But when it actually comes to people who habitually go online and habitually say and do things that create a negative and malign experience for others, either deliberately or by accident, then you've got to get tougher with that.
So persistent offenders, so to speak, alternative offenders, but ones that can be spotted with a consistent line on certain areas, they should be weeded out.
I think they should. I think in the first instance they should be suspended from being able to use the service with a warning. I mean, that is proportionate when you're talking about that which is inappropriate. If they persist, then their IP address, that they're using, they should be banned. And actually, if they go on and it becomes that point where actually it's a course of conduct which harasses and distresses others, then I think they should actually report to the police. But therein lies the problem. Facebook have 4,500 moderators. They're investing in a further 3,000 moderators, so they recognise capacity is an issue. How many police officers are working on this tonight in the UK?
I know you know the answer. I don't. Tell me.
A handful. And here's the thing. A handful. So if you actually are being bullied and intimidated online now, and Facebook did what I think they should do, which is the right thing to say, actually, this is intimidatory behaviour. We're going to report that. The police would not be able to manage it. So the government have to move beyond rhetoric of saying the social media sites need to get better. They need to invest and deliver a capacity. I mean, we've heard the police chief responsible for child abuse images online saying there are too many of them and too few of us. Well, actually add to it this grey area where it's inappropriate, and I don't think it's all grey at all, but add that area to it. And actually, if you go out and you say, I want, it's okay to beat up everybody who's bald, and I'm using that as, an obvious example. That actually, how does that make it, when you're talking about young children and you're describing particular attributes or whatever, how does that make them feel? We know there's a problem with mental health. We know there's an issue about self-esteem. We know that social media is actually about how you feel about one another. So they've got to get tougher on that.
But just on that, I mean, so if Facebook recruit, when Facebook recruit, and indeed other social media sites recruit more moderators, potentially criminal actions taking place there, there's not much point if you want to follow that course because the state's resources are not matching those of the Facebook's.
Well, they're not, and nor is there sophistication or commitment, I think. So if you look back to some of the terrible events, that the murder of April Jones, a terrible tragedy where a predator, captured her and murdered her. The government's response at the time was to actually attack Google. Now, of course, Google's a search engine. So the understanding demonstrated about these online spaces by government is not mature. And it seems that the rhetoric is great because rhetoric is free. So if government really want to make a difference, yes, think about what you regulate, but only regulate that which is going to be meaningful, have effect, but invest in your own resources so that when social networking companies come to you and say, we need to get these people out of here, you can do it.
Jim, I'm sorry we're out of time, but some fascinating points made there. Thanks very much indeed for sharing your take on that with us. Jim Gamble there.